Welcome to the Full Circle Show. The Full Circle Show is the Artist Podcast. Every episode, we bring on guests who share their story within their creative field in hopes of providing you with inspiration and entertainment. On this week's episode 17, we talk to Jeff Hook, a cinematographer and photographer with more than 15 years of experience behind the camera. Born and raised in Sacramento, California, he started his passion creating skateboard and snowboard videos. After going to school for film and video production, he gained experience working as a freelancer and working at a local NBC news station. This early love for documentary filmmaking grew into career and to brand marketing. We talked to Jeff about his experiences traveling and documenting the natural world while also learning to grow as a creator in the world's digital landscape. He is the media director for Sacramento-based Creative Agency, Yellow Brick Group, a full-service creative agency that specializes in brand identities and curation. From photography, video, and design to event curation, ad campaigns, and apparel, Yellow Brick Group aims to elevate the brands they work with. If you want to connect with Jeff or Yellow Brick Group, links to their socials will be in the show notes. This is part 2 of our conversation with Jeff Hook. If you haven't listened to part 1, I definitely recommend you do so, just so this episode doesn't seem out of context. Let's get into it. How would you describe the feeling of that you were going through, that you were experiencing after, that in 2016, right, where you weren't able to create as much and you had that injury and it affected your work as well? How would you describe that feeling? Like by the end of it, how were you feeling?
Honestly, it was a pretty deep state of depression. I wasn't locking myself indoors and all that type of stuff, but I definitely wasn't. I didn't feel like I was. I guess I was getting down on myself because I was like, hey, dude, like you're not doing what you should be doing right now, man. Like get out and do something. But at the same time, like when you're bedridden, like you kind of can't. Like when you're recovering from surgery, you kind of can't, right? So you try to find things to kind of keep your mind going. I gravitated towards watching films and playing video games more and more, dude. Because you're sitting on the couch, you need to entertain yourself, right? But at the end of that whole experience, when I was like still in that deep depression, I was like, okay, I won't say deep, but getting into that depression and being like kind of complacent with myself and kind of like, I was like, you know what? I need to get outside my own ego and just go do it. Like, it's really, I mean, I just had that video pop in my head with Shia LaBeouf where he's like, just do it. It's true, dude. Like, as much as as cliche as it is, like, if you don't get out of your own way and like go and do something, like you're never going to do something. So like, just once you step foot, once you do what you want to start doing, once you start doing it, it's gonna keep going. Like there's no stopping you at that point. It's almost, I mean, it kind of goes back to hiking, right? Like if you're hiking, like if you stop, you're stopped. Like if you walk, if you keep going, you're gonna get that momentum, right? You're gonna, each step gets easier as you keep stepping until you reach that limit of like, okay, I need to take a break, which is totally fine. You can take a break, but you still want that mindset of like, let's keep pushing forward. Let's keep trying to push this creativity as much as we can.
Yeah, no, 100%. And how you said, it might sound cliche, but it's true. I feel like we sometimes can fall in love more with the idea of doing it than actually doing it. Like, we fall in love with the idea of actually hiking, going through the hike. Oh yeah, hike sounds fun, right? But like when you actually start walking, I said it's, depending on the hike, right? Depending on the hike, it's, it can suck at sometimes, but it's just keeping it in mind, just keeping it going and keeping it pushing. And I think a hike is even better. Like you build that momentum, but if you're with a group, there's even more force behind the movement. So I kind of wanted to touch up on that. So you said you started kind of trying to involve yourself into the photography scene a little bit more in Sacramento. I'm curious to find out what came a little bit first. Was that you meeting the guys from Yellow Brick, or was it Good Ink, or I guess tell us a little bit about your interaction in the Sacramento scene?
Yeah, so I started. Let's go back to like 2014 was when I graduated from Sacramento State, and then I was looking kind of just to get work in general. So I was doing freelance work, doing I think my first real like gig or first real job was like a conference. I think I was going there and I was documenting what they were talking about at the conference. I think it was like a nurses conference or something like that, or medical professional conference, and then capturing those interviews and then being able to like put that together and stuff, right? Put that together into a cohesive video that kind of gets the whole point across of what the conference was about. And I was doing those types of videos, and really anything that was like any opportunity that was presented to me, I was going to take that opportunity. And then I had a friend or a family friend that used to live across the street from my mom when I was growing up, and she had a friend who was working at KCRA3 News, the NBC news station here in Sacramento. And she knew somebody that was working there, but then was also going to be leaving in a couple of months or in a month or so. And she put in a good word for me. I got a tour, and I was able to get the job like within 3 months or so, with like 1 or 2 interviews. I got called back to have the job, and I was like, oh wow, like this is my. I don't want to say it's my in the industry, but it was at the time I was like, okay, I'm going to get some actual experience here. I'm going to get some actual firsthand experience with video production company that is like, you know, they're pretty front facing, dude. Like news is, it's a very closed environment. I was working in the studio, but there's a lot of parameters. You get to play with lights. You get to, you know, you interact with the talent. There's audio. We were using robotic cameras, which was my first introduction into robotic cameras and controlling them from like one central location, right? So I was going through. I started working at KCRA3 in 2014, and for like the next 2 years, I was kind of just doing freelance and doing photography and like just kind of figuring stuff out outside of that because I was only working part time at the news station. So I started seeing like the photography scene kind of like booming on Instagram. I think I joined Instagram in I want to say it was 2014. I think my first Instagram post was in 2014. And let me see here. I wrote that down. I'm going to go with 2014. It could be 2012. I'm going to go 2014. Anyway, I started to notice like, oh wow, there's a lot of photographers in Sacramento. Like that's sweet, dude. Like, and then I got a video production gig at for the music festival that was happening in 2014. It was or was it 2015? Yeah, 2014 was TBD Fest, Tower Bridge District Festival. And that happened in 2014, then happened in 2015. So I did video production on both years. And I started to see a couple of photographers that I had noticed. I think I saw like Will Thompson was working that same event. He was taking photos and stuff. I didn't actually really start meeting those guys until the summer of 2016. I want to say that I met them. It was probably, I don't remember if it was June or September. It was the beginning of summer or the end of the summer. But there was a film festival that they were putting on called Rise of the Reel. It was a small film festival about short films that were produced by Sacramento creatives, but that didn't have any parameters. It wasn't like only fictional stories, only documentary series. It was like you could do a short film on a time-lapse short film. You could do a short film you could do a vlog if you wanted. Like you could really, as long as the guys were stoked on the video that you were putting together, like they'd be down to have you like showcase it, right? So that was my first interaction with the Good Ink guys and with all the Sacramento photographers and stuff. And the reception that I got from that first film festival, or that first film festival, short film festival, was like, it was beyond what I thought that I was gonna like get from it, dude. Like I had people coming up to me after like, oh hey, what's your name? Like blah blah blah, like trying to communicate and trying to collaborate and trying to make connections and stuff. And I was like not ready for it. So, but at the same time, I was super stoked on it. So like I was a little nervous, but at the same time, I was like, man, like this is cool. Like being able to discuss mutual interests with other people outside of a school setting, outside of a classroom setting, right? Like people that were like just genuinely interested in photography or genuinely interested in video. I think I put together a Sacramento time lapse video for that short or for that film festival. And then I met the Yellow Brick guys, 20 actually. When I mentioned I started getting busy in 2017, like I started actually getting more work in 2017 as I was like going through the hike challenge. I met, I got a call or I got a message on Facebook actually from Curtis, one of the co-founders of Yellow Brick Group, and he messaged me and was like, "Hey, I just wondering if you are still doing video production, blah blah blah. Like I know that I know you do video work, and I had actually met him at Sacramento City College." Years earlier. I met him like 4 years earlier at Sacramento City College in a history class that we were only in the same history class for like a semester. And I had actually had the surgery that I had in 2016 was actually from complications from a surgery that I had in 2012. So I met Curtis in 2012 while I was going through that entire surgery process. So I was like in and out of school. I was like, I think I had missed the final. I had to take the final at home or something. But like me and him interacted a few times for like a couple of months during that class. And I think we probably followed each other on Facebook or something like that. And then we ran into each other at TBD Fest. Like I ran into him at TBD Fest walking around, and I ran into him backstage, which was the weirdest thing because I didn't expect to run into anybody else I knew backstage besides the video production guys. So I ran into him and I was like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And he was like, "Oh, we talked for a little bit." He was asking what I was doing. I was doing video production or whatever. So that was 2014 was when that TBD Fest was. 2015, I saw him again at TBD Fest, and I was like, "Oh, wow, like happenstance, like super interesting to see you again or whatever." And then he hit me up, at the end of, or at the, I think it was like February or March of 2017. Yellow Brick Group actually hadn't been created yet, or hadn't been thought about yet. At least I didn't know if it had been thought about yet. There was another creative agency that we were kind of starting with, or kind of working through. Not working through, but there was another creative agency that Curtis and Sean and a couple other guys were working on, and he contacted me and was like, "Hey, dude, are you still doing video production? I wanted to see if you wanted to work with us on a couple of jobs or a couple of projects," and so this is all happening within like a couple of years, right? I had just met the Good Ink guys like that summer before. 2017 hit, and I'm like, okay, I need to find some motivation. And then I started getting work from, lo and behold, from Curtis, who now is like my boss for like 2.5 years. So we started Yellow Brick Group, or they started Yellow Brick Group. Curtis and Sean and Damien started Yellow Brick Group in 2018, January 2018. No, that's a lie. 2018. No, that's not a lie. 2018, the January 1st, 2018 was like our first, was Yellow Brick Group's first day as a company. And I started out as a contracted worker. We were doing, we had a couple of clients here and there. We were doing as much as we could to acquire new clients and to acquire new productions and new projects and things, right? And then I was working with them for about 9 months before Yellow Brick was like, Yellow Brick kind of launched. We were doing a couple of things outside of that, right? But ever since then, dude, like I've been almost 24/7 Yellow Brick Group, dude. Like I left KCRA 3 News in 2018, about 3/4 of a year after Yellow Brick started. I left KCRA. I was like, yo, I am not feeling a sense of fulfillment working in video production and news production. Because I was doing the same kind of thing every week, the same kind of thing every day for 4 years, right? So, wanting to like kind of branch out and to expand my creativity and work with people that were in an industry that I wanted to work in, and doing, a multitude of projects that I wouldn't have had access to or wouldn't have even known about until I, started working with them. I was like super hyped to drop my part-time job at KCRA and just do like full-time into being the media director at Yellow Brick Group. So that's kind of like the timeline of how those events kind of unfolded. I know we kind of bounced around a little bit
No,
there.
no, it's good. No,
But
I think it's perfect because it's good to give that context of meeting the right people and like that's exactly why I called it full circle, bro. Because it's you met him in history class or Curtis, right? You met Curtis in history class, and then you interact with him like maybe every year you run into him, and then eventually he reaches out to you and he's like, "Yo, are you still doing video production?" And it's just crazy how you never know like the people that you meet, right? You never really know how they're gonna play later on in your life. They could be a huge part of in your life, or they might not be a part of your life, right? But it's just interesting to see that.
another interesting thing about that too is I was so I had just met Good Thompson. I had just met Will Thompson, the creator, founder, co-founder, creator, founder of Good Inc. I'm gonna call him the founder because I don't know if he was the co-founder, but he's the founder of Good Inc. He's the mayor of Sacramento, dude. Like, Will Thompson is the man, bro. I met him in 2016 at Rise of the Real, or like that was my first like face-to-face conversation with him, like meeting him, like oh, this is what this guy's about. This is this is like Will Thompson, right? So I met him in the summer of 2016, and then as Curtis was talking to me, as Curtis messaged me, he was like, "Oh yeah, we're working with Will Thompson. He's going to be our photographer. He's going to do some photography work with us too." So, it's interesting how you, like you were saying, you meet somebody a year before you actually start like really working with them, and that's not to say that like projects and productions and collaborations don't start right off the bat, because they do start right off the bat. Sometimes when you meet somebody, you're like, oh yeah, like let's collaborate right now. Let's do this right now. Sometimes, you just randomly have a conversation with somebody, and then like a year later you start working with that person. It's like, it's just, sometimes it's how it goes. And like, you're never going to have that foresight of like, oh, this is the person that I need to talk to because this is what's going to happen years from now. Right. It's never going to happen. I just feel so fortunate to like have been in the circumstances that I was in, and then have like, and like was able to like really notice like, oh, this is an opportunity. Like, let's take this opportunity. Because if I didn't jump ship from like working a part-time job in video production at a news station, then I would probably still be working that part-time job at a news station, dude. But like, freelance is tough, but like it's tough, but it's also that much funner when like it's not freelance and it's like you're with a group of people that work together as a team, dude. Like, case in point with like you and working with Black Tape, like it goes back to that huge motivating factor of like, we're a unit, we're a team. Like we go through these productions, we go through the pre-production process, the production process, the post-production process as a team, and we have conversations throughout that then help us either learn something new throughout that process, or you overcome something that you didn't think that you were going to have to overcome, like throughout that process, right? So like, we talk about this a lot at Yellow Brick Group, that like we get paid to learn things. Like, we get paid to like figure something out, and then make it as good as it can be. Like, we may not always know exactly how to achieve something, but we know the bits and pieces that allow us to achieve that end product, right? Like all the building blocks to kind of to make that ending piece.
Yeah, 100%. It's you get to learn, with a group of people that are just as passionate as you are, in whatever that they're, it could be graphic design, it could be photography, right? And you learn, and you get to give back to the community, the businesses in your area, or locally or nationally, depending on, right? But you solve their problems, and how you said you learn how to solve their problems, and maybe 6 months after your first time working with them, you're learning something else, and you're like, yeah, I can solve that. I can help you guys out with that, because we've been learning. Like, we're growing together, and like we can solve these bigger problems now. We can solve these different problems. We can tackle this, and that's what it's about, bro. Like, sometimes you're not gonna know everything, and you might not be able to solve it all the way through. But going back to the thing, like, you can't get complacent, even as a group, right? Like, even no matter what you achieve, like, there's still things that like, okay, you got to keep on looking out for the thing that you could get better. Like, okay, how could we do that better? Even if the client loved it, like even if the client was like, oh, I'm loving this, like I'm crying, like how can we do better? Like what could we have done better?
Yeah, exactly. And you're always striving to like one up yourself, right? Like you're always striving to like. I'm a big believer in like not doing the same thing twice. So like, which there's a lot of things that you have to do the same thing twice, right? But like using an effect that you use in a certain way, I think that it should stand alone in that project that you intended it for, right? There's a lot of things that you can do in multiple projects, but I think creating something new and then adding that to that specific project is like super important because then it puts that project or that production or that video in kind of a category of its own of like, you know, this is on my mantle of like that type of production that I did with that type of style or that type of effect or whatever, right? And it could be something as easy as like, or something as simple as like, oh, I'm making, for example, for Yellow Brick Group, I made we did some videos around the promotion of our apparel collection that we came out with earlier this year, and it had to do with like floating clothing and stuff, right? And like I utilized we utilized the green suit that I've had for like years, and we put it in front of a green screen and put on clothing and then made that clothing float. But which we can utilize in different ways in the future, but we don't have to do it the exact same way every single time. You know, like you can utilize bits and pieces of it. You can change the medium in which it's presented or something like that, right? So I think it's super important to like not get stuck in one type of idea or one type of style, but be able to do multiple types of styles and multiple types of ideas, right?
I'm curious to, because we're on the topic of learning and trying to, you know, new things every single time that we get an opportunity to, right? So so on the topic of learning, I'm curious to kind of hear your way of what would you say to someone who, if you're trying to convince them or encourage them, I think that's a better word, encourage, to go out there and get into like the real world, right? Because you came out of film school and you were learning these things, and you were still like you know, filming on the side, but you were mainly learning in an environment of learning, and with YouTube, you know, we get caught up on learning, but how would you encourage someone to, or what would you say to encourage someone to actually go out and network and actually try these things out? Because that's like super key in our industry.
It's so important. I mean, dude, honestly, communication is one of the things that is probably the most important thing in video production. Being able to communicate your ideas, communicate your thoughts, communicate your objectives, all that type of stuff, right? So communication is one of those things where like I think a lot of people think like, oh, I don't want to be too general, but some people think that like, you know, oh, communication, like a talk, like I give you some information, you take that information and you build something from it. Yes, that's what communication is, but there's different levels of communication, and you have to meet somebody with the type of communication that they acquire or that they require, right? So you have to meet somebody on their level. So you have to be able to explain something to them in layman's terms. You have to be able to say, okay, this is what your idea is, and this is how I could achieve it, or we could do it this way, and these are the benefits from doing it the way that I think is best to do it, right? And that goes for just about anything, right? Lighting techniques, camera angles, all that type of stuff, right? There is no right way to do something, but there is something to be said of like doing something for a specific reason and then being able to like let that information or being able to like do something for a reason and then have that reason actually like affect, or have that outcome actually affect the person that's watching it, right? Giving somebody a certain feeling on camera is like super important when you're trying to tell a story that's like emotional, right? Like you don't want to shoot something in a way that's not emotional if it's an emotional subject. So yeah, dude, it's like, I think it's super important to just be able to just yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that, honestly, dude. Like it's just important to be able to do different things, but then be able to communicate your ideas to those people, right? there's a lot of things that can get lost in translation, especially when you're discussing a project and you're discussing things. So like being able to communicate and being able to like explain your ideas to people and in a way that they can retain the information and understand is like, that's the most important thing for me, for sure, in video production.
How do you see your progress ever since you left school? I mean, you were always learning, but I think it was a thing where you were learning and you were automatically applying. But ever since you left school and actually like stepped into like, okay, now like you're in it, you're in it, right? You're meeting all these people as you're freelancing, like, you know, you gotta. There's no curriculum here. Like, there's like, if you want to learn something, like you gotta figure out how to learn it. You know, and if you have to edit, like it's on you to edit. It's you got to discipline yourself to finish a project, right? There's no bell ringing or something that's like, okay, I have to go edit now.
Yeah, exactly. You say what's my motivation behind it? Is that what you're saying?
So how would you describe your progress doing that?
I see.
Like actually stepping into that.
I feel with my trajectory with video production, I feel like it's or like my progress, I guess, is I didn't really start to utilize a lot of the information that I learned in school until I was applying it in the right circumstances, right? Like when I was doing lighting and learning lighting in my lighting class in school, I was having a great time, was learning a lot of things, but as soon as I left school, I didn't have access to that equipment, right? I didn't have access to those large Fresnel lights, those large halogen bulb lights that throw a lot of light and that utilize a lot of light, right? So I didn't really start using those things that I learned until I was at KCRA and applying those things in an environment that I was like able to apply them in. But again, that was also stuck in or centered around being at that location, being at work, being in that environment, right? Like for my productions that were outside and my freelance stuff that was outside, I didn't have access to lights and stuff. I didn't have access to like super high definition cameras. I was using a T3i and a Canon 6D for the majority of my filmmaking or my photography and video production career. So application is one of those things that I think really starts to get you to remember, like, oh yeah, that's why I learned this. That's why this is the way it is. Once you start applying those things and start utilizing those things, because you start to connect all the dots, right? You start to be like, oh, that's why that is like that. You know, I remember learning that, but I never got to apply it anywhere, so I wasn't able to actually understand it. That was one thing that I think fell short of in some of my classes, was that like there wasn't a lot of application. For one, audio. Like I didn't learn anything in school in my audio class. I'm just gonna say it because there was no application. There was no like create a scene and then, you know, put this audio together and mash up the audio and create a whole thing. It was like, I'm going to teach you a bunch of information about audio, but then not have you apply it all until the final project. And repetition and application is one of those things that like gets you to remember all the techniques that you've learned, right? Like there's no better experience than firsthand experience. And you don't learn from the experiences that you don't learn a lot. You don't learn. Okay, I'll say this. When you fail, you learn a lot more than when you succeed, right? Because when you fail, you learn all those things that you did wrong, and then you reflect on that, and then you change all those things that you did wrong or alter those things that you did wrong to then have a better outcome, right? If you just win all the time, like you're not going to be learning. That ego starts to creep up, and you're like, oh, okay, like I know exactly what I'm doing. Like, don't listen to him, listen to me, like all that type of stuff, right? But you got to get outside of that, right? Like, cause not just because like the idea that you might have is a good idea, it may not be the right idea for the situation at hand, right? And that's what I mean by kind of getting outside of ego. Like I like taking opinion from people on set that, you know, sometimes I'm the cinematographer or the director of photography, right? And I'm holding the camera and I'm utilizing the camera. But more often than not, like I want to get other opinions in on how I'm shooting something, because I know that like I'm thinking about it one way, but like how is this going to be perceived to somebody else? So having that collaboration on set and having that repetition of that collaboration on set, it just really like that's I think what puts you in a good state of learning, and then utilizing all the things that you learned, right? Like you just want to be in the same that it's almost like football players and running the same play over and over and over and over again. Once you get that play down, like you're set. And then if you need to call that audible, like we were saying before, like you're ready to call that audible because you're seeing what's going wrong, or you're seeing what's going right, or whatever, right? So yeah, dude, it's learning is one of those things where like I never feel like I'm ever going to stop learning, because there's always another way to do something. There's always like, I'm not going to say it's a better way of doing something, because with video production and with photography in general, there's 10 different ways to do one thing. You can achieve the same emotion and the same feeling by cutting things and editing things in certain ways or whatever. So yeah, dude, like learning is one of those things where like you can't get enough of it, man.
Yeah, and how you said, you gotta eat shit to learn, bro. It's like,
Yeah,
you can learn it and you feel like you're doing something, but if you don't apply it and then figure out, okay, what went wrong, even then you still learn, and you gotta eat shit. And I think how you said, it's very important to ask for feedback, ask for criticism, and especially if you can surround yourself with a group of people who are always looking out for your growth by, I guess, criticizing and giving constructive feedback, that it's even better, right? Because you get those perspectives of how it is perceived from a third, I guess, out of your own perspective. So I want to touch up on, I guess, surrounding yourself with a group of people. In your case, Yellow Brick Group. I saw that you guys just been traveling. You guys went to Morocco. You guys went to Amsterdam.
Yeah, that was
Barcelona.
Man, yeah. So I'll let you in on a little secret that that Amsterdam, Barcelona, Morocco trip, which was back-to-back locations, right? It was one trip, was all three of those locations, all three of those countries. That was my first international trip. I had never been outside. Okay, it wasn't okay. My first international trip overseas. I had been to Canada before, but I don't count that as an international trip because you just drive across the border and that's it. It was my first 12-hour plane ride. It was my first time in a different country that spoke a different language. So I started off with going to Amsterdam. I had a friend in Amsterdam. I stayed with him, right? But it's also like Amsterdam is one of those things where like you go there and everybody speaks English. So it wasn't like as intense of a culture shock as I got until I was at in Spain, and then even more of a culture shock when I was in Morocco. Morocco, dude. Morocco was intense, dude. But let's start with Spain. I guess Spain was one of those things where we all. So interesting thing about that trip, actually, we all met in Spain. We all went to different countries before meeting in Spain. So I went to Amsterdam, hung out with some friends, did a little bit of exploring and some documenting and all that, and then met up with the Yellow Brick Group guys in Spain, because there was a big convention, a big expo there for it was a big cannabis expo. It was called Spanibus. It was Spain's version of the Cannabis Cup that happens in the States, or in California, and the states that marijuana is legal, that cannabis is legal. And so that was our big reason for going there, was to be able to be in the city with all these different brands and all these different companies, to be able to interact with all those different brands and all those different companies. So we met in Spain, explored the city, went to the beach. I got to go to a Barcelona game, FC Barcelona game. It was the Premier League finals too. It was FC Barcelona versus Barcelona FC. That's what it should be, right? Barcelona versus,
It was Lyon.
Lyon, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. And I bought that ticket like a couple weeks before. And it's funny because you are not able to, being someone who's not from Spain and doesn't live in Spain, is not a Spain citizen, you're not allowed to buy tickets in the lower bowl of the arena. Like, you can't buy tickets in the lower bowl unless you go to a website that is selling tickets that are already sold. So I essentially bought a ticket that was from a season ticket holder that was selling that ticket because they weren't able to go there, right? So I was lucky enough to be like the 20th row up. And you know, I'm like almost like field level with like Messi and like all these soccer players that like all these football players that I had seen on television but like never had seen in person. And like, dude, the atmosphere in that arena was insane. Like, they're singing the entire time in unison. The entire, like, I'm not going to start singing because it's Spanish, and they're just like, you know, they're going hard, but like, yeah, they're yelling and they're doing all these like claps and stuff. They're doing everything right. It's so great. It's so great. Everybody's having the time of their lives, right? It's so awesome. And then contrasted with like going to, and then like there's the whole city vibe and stuff. There's a lot of good places to eat. There's mercados, a lot of good places to learn culture and all that, right? So a big part of us going to Spain, also, you know, going to Spanibus and all that, right? But also learning about the food scene there and going to the different markets and the different food markets and the wet markets that they have there and stuff, right? So this was around the same time that, when did we go? We went in 2019. 2018 was the first year that we did the Our Street Night Market, and 2019 was the second year that we did it. But we only did one event in 2018, one Our Street Night Market event in 2018, and we were planning on doing another one, but we didn't want to, A, fall short, but B, we didn't want to bite off more than we could chew in a month and a half time period of planning and preparation and getting vendors and all these things, right? Because we used the whole first half of the year to get everybody to go to the first one, to get everybody to sign up sponsors and vendors and things to go to the first one. We didn't sign them up for both and get them to agree to both, because we weren't sure if the first one was going to go off without a hitch, if we were going to lose money, make money, whatever, right? Lo and behold, it's like I think we had like 12,000, 16,000 people the first event, or some crazy number. I think it was 12,000, 13,000. And so that next year, 2019, we really wanted to bring the heat with the night market and with the experience. So going to Spain and going to the wet markets and like experiencing the different food and all that stuff and the different markets that they have there was really about learning as much as we could to be able to bring that experience to the night market, to bring certain elements of that experience that we had in Spain to the night market.
How does traveling, you know, with like all together, how does that affect your chemistry and the way you do your work, you know, when you come back home?
Honestly, it makes it a lot. It brings everybody together, dude. Like, it really, like, you start to learn different things about people that you didn't know. You start to have conversations that are outside of work, that are in more of like a relaxed setting, more of a social setting. We went to a bar that was in the freezer of a meat a meatery of a butcher shop. Like, you go into the butcher, I think it was a butcher shop. You go into the butcher shop, then they open up the freezer door, and it's actually a bar in the freezer. And like, you walk in, and they have all these different crazy drinks and stuff that like they had a drink that was or like hot air balloon. It was a hot air balloon. It was like the shot was at the bottom, and then there was like a hot air balloon at the top or something like that. And like, it was super extravagant, super out there, but like all it was an alcoholic shot, like or a mixed drink or whatever, right? There was one that came in like a Trojan horse. Like, they gave you like a small little Trojan horse that's like this big, like this long or whatever. And you had to they tell you like a little spiel or whatever. They said something like I don't know what you'll find, but when you do, I hope you like it, or something like that. And then like, you open up like the tail of you open up the butt of the Trojan horse, and like you pull out a glass.
Yeah, I saw it. I remember.
And it's a huge, you saw it on the video. It's hella funny.
Yeah.
And then like going back to the crux of your question, like, it's you really start to like level with everybody on like you really start to be genuinely like great friends with these people, dude. Like you start to learn the ins and outs of how they think, the ins and outs of like their inspirations and their motivations, and like you really start to figure out like, okay, this is like what this person's about, and how do I like now, how do I aid this person in achieving what they want to achieve, but then also help them aid me in achieving what I want to achieve. So that we can then, come together and then achieve greatness together, right? That's what it's all about, right? You just want to you just want to make cool stuff with your friends, right? And then like have people be happy that you created cool stuff with your friends. Like that's really what it comes down to. So like a big takeaway from like going on these trips was just to be able to like learn a lot from our experience, but then showcase that experience with people that weren't there with us. We didn't get into Morocco that much, but like going into Morocco, like Morocco is a trip, man. Like you get there and nobody likes cameras. Nobody wants a camera pointed at them. You will like damn near get punched if you like are taking a photo of somebody and they're within arm's reach of you. Like they don't want to get taken advantage of. B, they don't want to not be compensated for what they're being displayed as doing. So like if you're taking a video of somebody who's dancing or somebody who's like hustling on the street or something, you're benefiting from what they're doing, but they're not benefiting from what they're doing. And in their eyes, they're like, okay, I need to be benefited. I need to have something come out of this situation, right? I don't want my persona to be put in a magazine and then like there to be a negative connotation behind that or whatever, right? They also probably don't want to be spied on and all that type of stuff. There was a moment where I was walking by like a guy. There's a place there called I can't remember the name of it at this moment, but it's a huge marketplace, and they man, I'm really upset that I can't remember this right now. Anyway, it's a huge marketplace in Morocco, in Marrakesh, and they there's these things called souks, which are alleyways that you can go through, and there's different businesses and stuff and different vendors and things, and they're all in like roll up doors, like garage doors, so that at the end of the day they can close the garage doors, all their stuff is fine or whatever. But I walked by this garage door or this garage, and there was a guy in there like he was like working with a grinder and like filing down some kind of tool or something like that, metalwork or something like that. And I walk by and I see him and I'm like, oh, like I don't want to bother him, but I just want to like take a photo. And I like snuck my camera in, and just as I was like gonna like take a photo or a video, he like looked at me and like picks up his hammer and like almost throws his hammer at me. Like he doesn't let go of it, but he goes like this and then he's like, no, like don't take photos of me. And I was like, whoa, like my bad, dude. Like, so there's a lot of things that I wasn't ready for when I went to that country. But at the end of the day, like people are super nice there when you meet them on a level footing. Like if they don't think that you're trying to take advantage of them, then they're not going to treat you with disrespect, right? They're going to treat you with as much respect as they can give you, until they feel like there's something about the situation that is not good, right? So, almost just like anybody else. Like if you were getting taken advantage of, you wouldn't want to be taken advantage of, right? So, I had a lot of conversations with different people we went on a tour through the souks, and there was a guy who owned a rug business, and he was teaching us all about these rugs and stuff. Super open to talking to us about it and everything. Granted, he wanted us to buy a rug, but just like how open they were of like sharing their culture and sharing the information was like super like it made me feel really good to like be experiencing it. You know what I mean? Like they made me feel welcome, and they made me feel like it was okay that I was there having this experience that I was having, because they were like genuinely giving me information about their culture and talking to me about it in a very relaxed way, right? We went to the coastal city of Essaouira, and we actually got a we actually got a tour of like the fishing area. And this guy, granted, he saw that I had a camera, and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give this guy a little tour and hope that he gives me some money or whatever." And we did give him I think we gave him like $25 US, which is like 250 of their currency. And it was a really cool experience. He gave us a lot of information. Like, granted, it was a lot of really good footage too. It was really felt documentary. Really felt like Vice style, like following him through the docks and through like the different areas. He was telling us about these fish hooks and about like how people put them together, and like about the different boats and why different boats have different type of equipment on them, because they have all that different type of equipment on these boats because each boat is specific to what they're trying to catch. So like, if this boat has long spears on it, then like they're going after something that really needs like those long spears, right? It's only the equipment that's on that boat is only for what they're catching. They're not trying to catch everything. They're trying to catch one specific item. So I just learned so much about culture while I was out there, man. Like you start to really get humble by your experience. You really start to feel humbled by like, okay, the United States and like my way of life is not the way of life that everybody has. It's not like it's not not I'm kind of trying to find the word here that I can't really find, but
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like it's I don't know. Like it puts things into perspective of how much we have here, like in the States, right? And how many resources and even simple things, like it just brings so much appreciation. Like when I would travel to Mexico, because my parents are from Mexico, and they got family over there. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like you just see, and we were talking about it in the last episode with our guest Garrick, and in his experience, it was Hong Kong and going to China, and you just see this whole like bottom end of the spectrum, like of I guess finances or just poverty, and it's like wow, and when I saw it, it gave me like first a sense of gratitude, right? But I think other than that, a motivation to really push myself to like do what I love to do because of the resources I have. And I think if you approach it first with that foundation of gratitude, like it gives you a good starting point to keep striving into what you want to do. And I don't know, yeah.
It's a very humbling experience, man. Yeah, doing any kind of international travel, I tell people like, if you have the opportunity to do an international travel or do something international, go to a country that is below your, I don't want to say below your poverty level, but like something that is outside of the norm of where you usually go. Go to a place like India, go to a place like Hong Kong, get that culture shock, because not only does it humble you, but it makes you a better person. It makes you a more interesting person. It makes you really realize that like, there's more out there. There's more in this world. There's more perspectives in this world than just my own. And you really start to figure out that like, it's important to tell these stories for all these people. It's important for people to know this type of thing, because then they know that like their perspective is not the dominant perspective. It's not the perspective that the majority of people have in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about the inspiration when you guys went to go to the markets in Spain as a group, and you guys actually brought that back and applied it, in was it the second, right? The second Art Street Market project?
Yeah, I think we learned more from the markets in Morocco and from the markets in Mexico City. Mexico City was our trip that we did in 2019 after the night markets, because we were getting ready for the night markets in 2020, and it didn't end up happening because of everything in 2020, right? So there's a lot of things that we learned in those markets that we wanted to bring to to our city and to our night market. But there was a lot of things that, and some of those things we weren't really able to just because of the restrictions in the United States. Food preparation is one of those things that a lot of people are weird about. A lot of people are. There's a lot of regulations in the States that like you have to be able to make sure that your event can actually happen. So for one of those things, it's you're not really able to have there be any sort of, like, you have to have a barrier in between the people that are cooking the food and the people that are receiving the food, so that there's no contaminations or anything like that, right? When you go to Mexico City, and you go to like Morocco and all those things, all the food is out. Like all the food is like, you could like pick it up and take it and leave. Like it's very much like in the elements, it's very much in the environment, but it also is what kind of makes the atmosphere, seeing all the different things, seeing all the fruit displayed and all the nuts and all the different food items and stuff, like seeing all those things be made right in front of you is, there's something to having that experience that you don't really get when like you're just handed the plate of food that has just been made for you behind the scenes or whatever, right? Like that was one thing that we wanted to bring but weren't really able to bring to our night markets, was in certain ways. Like there are ways that you can like that you can let people be really close to like the food preparation and all that, but there's a lot of times where you're restricted to not being able to do certain things, you know.
I guess in your own personal way of doing things as an artist, where do you usually draw inspiration from? I mean, is it travel? Is it, you know, seeing other people's work?
A lot of it's travel, but I usually get that inspiration while I'm traveling. When I'm not traveling, it's really just trying to digest as much media as I possibly can, and then hopefully remember all that stuff that I just digested. You know, I scrolling on Instagram for, you know, a half hour a day, like really gets me to kind of understand, okay, this is what people are kind of creating. This is what people that I follow are kind of interested in, kind of like to do, and then being able to draw inspiration from those things that they're creating and then create something my own out of the techniques that I either see them utilize or, you know, maybe an idea that I come up with based on what they're doing, but then I apply it to whatever product that I'm trying to showcase or whatever idea that I'm trying to showcase, right? So I gain a lot and gather a lot of inspiration from just seeing other photographers and seeing what other videographers are putting out, you know, other techniques that they use and techniques that I may not fully understand or fully know how to do, but then want to be able to learn and want to be able to do. Yeah, it's there's something to be said about like getting kind of overwhelmed with the content that you're seeing online and then getting like discouraged from it. I think that like there are times where I see content and I'm like, wow, like there's no way I could do something like that. Like that's like some crazy 3D graphic stuff that I would never be able to do or whatever. And I may be right, like I may not be able to do it right now, but I think seeing it and seeing that it's possible is important, because then you know that like these are the things that can be created. And if you then figure out or find out or come to the conclusion that like you're not able to do those things, well then you can now seek out those people that are, and then apply them to your production, apply them to your projects, bring them into your inner circle, and then figure out, okay, this is a way that we can help each other on this project to achieve the goal that we want to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, that's super important. I think that's a positive way of looking at it, because it's super easy, especially with Instagram and like hella talented people out there, like to fall into the trap of thinking, oh, because I can't do this, I'm not good enough, or I shouldn't try, or something like that, right?
It's almost like an expansion of like FOMO, right? It's almost like an expansion of like fear of missing out. You're like, oh, I missed out on that opportunity, so I'm never going to have that opportunity because I missed out on it. Like that's not true at all. Like there's times when I was starting photography and I was doing a lot of time lapse work and striving to get like those best sunsets, those best sunrises. You get to a location and there's no clouds. You try to go to Mount Tamalpais and get the low fog and you get to Mount Tam and there's no fog and it's a blue sky and you're like, okay, well, cool. Like, I wanted this, but now I don't get it. But you have to remember that, like, just because that opportunity didn't happen doesn't mean that it's not going to happen ever. Like, if you keep going and you keep doing it, like, you're going to get those opportunities. Like, you're going to get access to those opportunities, right? Those opportunities are going to come out of nowhere when you least expect them. I used to get really upset, or I wouldn't say upset. I used to get annoyed when I'd be working my part-time job and I would see like the sunset happening and I'm like, oh, like I missed a dope sunset again. Like, that's cool. Like, man, like I feel bad about missing that sunset or whatever. But dude, like the sun comes up every day and goes down every day. Like, it's like you're gonna have opportunities. You may not get that exact opportunity and that exact day or whatever, but there's gonna be plenty of opportunities in the future. And like being stuck in missing out, being stuck in like doing something that or being stuck in like not capitalizing on the opportunities that you like wish you capitalized on but then missed, I think it's one of those slippery slope kind of things where like you can slip into that depression or that unmotivational side of being an artist, right? So it's really important to just like not, for me, it's really important to just like not get down on myself or not get down in general or not feel down when I miss something as not repetitive, but as something as accessible as a sunset. Something as accessible as like, granted, if we go to like the solar eclipse, like I would have been really hurt if I missed that solar eclipse, dude. Like that for sure I would have been mad. But there's always the next day, right? There's always the next opportunity. And you have to kind of remember that. And I think over the last like 3 or 4 years, I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I missed this opportunity, but like, don't miss the next one. Or like, even if you miss the next one, like there's going to be another one. Like, so you want to be in the right mindset of like being ready for the opportunities when they happen and then recognizing them. But if you miss one, it's not the end of the world,
Yeah, I think connecting the 2 points that we last talked about is we can't approach it from like a fear mindset. Just like one of our previous guests said, like you have to have like that like you have to have a mindset of collaboration over like competition, and just recognize that there's an abundance of opportunities out there. And man, I think if we did that, like how you said, like maybe I can't do this 3D stuff right now, or maybe I don't know how to do this other stuff, like I can always reach out to someone and have them be a part of the project. And like I said, through the quote that stood out to me a lot was, we just want to, work with our friends and do cool work, dope work, and hopefully make someone else happy, as well. And that's really what it comes down to, bro, at the end of the day. Man, so a couple more questions before we wrap up here. So where do you see yourself, I guess, in 5 years? I mean, what's next for you, bro, in these next few months, in these next couple of years?
Man, I mean, dude, I'm ready for anything at this point. I feel like Yellow Brick Group is about to start launching forward into like, we have a couple of we've done some work with other companies in other states. So we're technically a national company. We've done work with brands that are from states outside of us, or we've helped our brands launch in other states. So expansion is, I think, one thing that expansion of projects and productions and expansion of brands and things, I think is really kind of where I'm hoping to go in the next 5 years or so with Yellow Brick Group. I think that we're at a good place and a good jumping off point in these first 2 years of business, that like it really sets us up for success in the next like 5 to 10 years, dude. Like working with these guys and like seeing their artistic tendencies and their mindset of things and their way of going about achieving a certain goal or achieving a certain outcome is, to me, it's like motivating and inspirational in itself. So like having that in my immediate social circle is like more than I could like really ever ask for. I think that I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, you know what, let's keep this ball rolling, dude. Like let's keep creating cool stuff and keep getting information out there for the brands that we want to elevate.
Boom, right there, bro. And then one last thing, and this is something that I've been trying to ask artists or guests a little bit more and more. So if you were, and I'm going to rephrase it from like the past episodes, but so let's kind of rewind back. You're about to like get into the real world, right? You're about to graduate college or high school or, school, right? Knowing what you know now, not having the network, not having the connections, but at least, having the knowledge and the experience, what would you do differently and why?
What would I do differently? I think honestly, I kind of answered that question a little bit in my previous statement of just like not getting out of your own way, like not letting yourself in your own, not letting that voice in your head that we all have of like, you can't do this. You need to stop. You're not gonna succeed at what you think you're gonna succeed at. Like, not listening to that voice and just being like, you know what, like this is exactly what I want to do, because I've never felt like as fulfilled as I feel with like doing this art form. So like, to me, the importance of like of keeping that motivation and the importance of like keeping the right mindset is just like, get out of your own way and don't let yourself bring yourself down. I don't know if that's really the best way to say it, but also like sense. Not taking yourself too seriously, dude. Like, you can't, if you take yourself too seriously, like you're always going to be in that mindset of like, it has to be this way because it's right this way. Like, things don't need to be right. They just need to be like, they need to do what they're supposed to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, you can't get, you always strive for perfection, but you can't, let it, stop you from actually taking action on it. And there was this one quote in a book that I read. I forgot what the book was, but it was, let's try to make mistakes of ambition and not of sloth, right? So don't make mistakes of, you should have done something, or you should have taken action on it and you didn't. Make mistakes of, okay, I'm trying, I'm gonna try, and I don't know what I don't know, but you have that opportunity to learn. And it's super important. Yeah, I agree. Cool. Well, I want to thank you guys again. Let the people know where they can find you if they want to connect with you and what you're doing.
Yeah, you can follow a lot of my work on Jeff Hook _ is my Instagram page. And then at Yellow Brick Group is where a lot of the branding and stuff goes on with Yellow Brick Group.
Boom. There you have it, guys. Go make sure to connect with Jeff, guys. I'm going to close out to the outro. Peace. And that's a wrap for part 2 of our conversation with Jeff Hook. Talking with someone with as much experience in his field as Jeff, you definitely learn a lot. I want to thank Jeff for coming onto the show and sharing his story. If you want to connect with him, check out his socials in the show notes. If you enjoyed listening to part 1 and part 2, consider sharing the show with any of your friends who are artists. As always, take care. Peace.